So we talked about some words that are not, appropriate. We've also know that there's not always going to be a wonderful student in the class, right? Let's get real. If 100% of our students were always 100% well-behaved and 100% on task, it would be great. But in reality, are we ever going to see that? No, it's a pipe dream, right? So sometimes we have a parent, and you haven't experienced this yet, for most of you probably, that seems to be taking over the class, right? You've probably heard about it if you haven't experienced, right? As a matter of fact, I had a class once, and I could hear the parent over there, and the parent answered, and I said, "That's right, Mom, good job." And then I heard the parent say, "She can hear me?" And I said, "Yes, I can hear you." And so I never heard her again. But, when we're addressing that, if it becomes a problem, and you're still going to have parents that might not take the clue, right? They might not take that verbal clue, "Yes, I can hear you." We have to understand some things, that a parent is there not to get in our way, right? I love my kids. I love, love, love my kids. I was the parent that probably got in the way. Let me tell you this. I was the parent that helped my children with their science project. I was the parent that helped my student with their English project. Right? We can see where this is going. We can see where this is going. It's not because I believed my children were incapable. It was because I wanted my children to be great, right? Nobody ever has a child and say, "I hope I have a mediocre child." Anybody ever said that? We all want our children to be the best, right? Nobody ever sends their child to school and say, "All right, try to get a C today," right? That's just not the way that we're geared. We're not built that way. And in China, getting a C is equivalent to getting an F, right? So they're very, very serious about a student's education. The education is the one thing that the student really needs to be doing well. So we want to make sure that when we're wording things to the parent, that we're wording them in a loving, kind manner, because we don't want to discourage the parent. Some of these parents, I believe, are learning English with their student. And in that case, then they actually have someone to speak English with and to practice with, which I think is wonderful. And I don't want to discourage that, right? So we can thank them for helping the student. So we want to make sure that the parent knows that the student needs to be listening to the teacher as well. We want to make sure that the parent knows that we need to hear the student alone. That sometimes this is the only way we're going to be able to determine that the student is actually learning. So how we phrase ourselves in the classroom makes a difference, or in that feedback makes a difference. Sometimes you're going to get a student and all they want to do is this, right? So I had a teacher that lives very close to me, and we actually had this discussion. She said that she read this about the student, and it wasn't inaccurate, that the student really did lean back. He did not seem motivated. But what she did was she decided to write the parent and say, "I know that," and she used the student's name, is able to do wonderful work. And I am so interested to hear what he has to say to me. And you know what happened? That next class, the student was up. He was smiling. He wasn't leaned back. He said, "Hello, Sarah." And he was ready for class. And he was just exuberant throughout the class. And he was able to learn. So this is a real life situation. Now, was it going to happen 100% of the time? I think we've already established nothing happens 100% of the time. But there's always going to be a reason that a student is unmotivated. We just may not be able to know what it is right away. And sometimes we have to figure it out. And sometimes it might just be that day, right? So we want to be careful in how we word things. We want to make sure that we use encouraging language so that the student is also encouraged when they come back. We never want a child to feel defeated or that they cannot do something. I know that once my husband took music lessons, and after taking that music lesson, the teacher came out and said, "You're wasting your time and my money. He can't learn." My husband never wanted to take music again. It takes time to learn music. No teacher should say that type of thing to a child because it really discouraged him to the point where he remembers it to this day, and he still does not have faith in his musical ability, which is a shame because he has a very nice singing voice. Sometimes you're going to find a student, it's going to seem as if the level is too difficult. So just like any good teacher, we have to make modifications. Right? So when we have to make modifications in class, we want to make sure that we tell the parent that we had to make these modifications in order for the student to be successful. It may be better for the student to work at a lower level. And we also want to make sure that if that happens, in that feedback form, there is a place at the very bottom of the feedback that allows you to address that to the learning partner. The learning partner can also address that with the parent. And again, sometimes the parent is not going to want to move the student back, and we just have to do the best that we can.